In 2020, a new sickness called CO started spreading. And by the time anyone understood how dangerous it was, it had already changed. It kept mutating. No cure ever stuck. The death toll climbed past 110 million people, and the mortality rate settled at a brutal 56%. Governments came up with a system to keep society from collapsing completely. If you were immune, you got a bracelet, and that bracelet meant you were allowed outside. Everyone else had to check their temperature on their phone every single morning. One bad reading, and you were gone. Shipped off to a quarantine zone called a Q zone. Nobody who went into a Q zone ever came back out. That was just the rumor, but everybody believed it. By 2024, the lockdown had lasted 4 years. People had learned to live inside 4 walls. And in the middle of all that fear, a delivery guy named Nico was one of the lucky few who could still walk the streets. Nico rode his motorcycle to a mansion with signs warning trespassers they'd get shot on sight. He rang the bell, and a rich client scolded him through the intercom before telling him to leave the package in the sanitation box, a device built to clean anything before it touched the inside of the house. The man refused to tip him because he was a few minutes late and demanded a different courier next time. Nico just shrugged it off. He figured the guy was jealous of anyone who still got to feel the sun. Back at the courier warehouse, Nico's boss Lester ran the whole operation from behind a wall of screens, tracking every rider with GPS and a fleet of drones. When Lester noticed Nico wasn't moving, he called him up and caught him shooting hoops on his break. Nico got chewed out for ignoring priority deliveries and sent straight back to work. Across town, a girl named Emma spent her mornings watching videos online, waiting for her mother Piper to wake up. Emma had an autoimmune disorder, so when she begged to have a friend over, Piper said no without hesitation. It just wasn't safe. Both of them ran the virus test on their phones and passed clean, and Emma shouted for her dad William to come take his test too. William was in the middle of a workout, half listening to a news report about a newly opened Q zone, where conditions were said to be inhumane. He rushed over at his daughter's call and passed the test as well. That's when Nico showed up at the family's packages. Emma lit up just from seeing a new face for once. Nico slid the delivery into the sanitation box and found a generous tip waiting for him, a nice change from his last stop. With his deliveries done for the moment, Nico climbed up to a rooftop for a break and called his girlfriend Sarah to show her the view. It would have been perfect if Lester's giant billboard wasn't blocking half of it. Sarah shared the view with her grandmother Lita, since neither of them had left their apartment in longer than they could remember. Nico and Sarah had never actually met in person. Every date they'd ever had was through a screen. While Nico was distracted, Lester got a complaint that he hadn't shown up for a delivery. He called his drone operator, a man named Dozer, and told him to find Nico fast. It didn't take long. The drone locked onto him within minutes, and Lester texted a warning that he had eyes on him. Nico responded by flipping off the camera and getting back on his bike, only to run straight into a military checkpoint. Soldiers leveled their guns at him until he flashed his immunity bracelet, and they waved him through. Once the day's deliveries were finally finished, Nico went home, scrubbed himself down, and spent the evening fixing up an old motorcycle he'd been rebuilding. Hearing the engine finally turn over felt like the best sound in the world. He'd been saving up every dollar for one reason: to get himself and Sarah out to Big Sur, a stretch of California that hadn't seen a single case in 6 months. All he needed now was an illegal bracelet for Sarah. The next day, Nico snuck into an old office building he used to work at, just to kill time. He found a box of pencils in a desk drawer and pocketed them like they were treasure. Across the city, a singer named May was live streaming to her followers when a viewer named Dozer sent her $100 and told her that her music had gotten him through some of his darkest days in the military. She sang his request live, and William and Sarah were both watching, though Lita wasn't impressed. She wished someone would just play her some salsa for once. Right in the middle of the stream, Nico arrived at Sarah's apartment with a special delivery. She opened the sanitation box and found a handwritten poem from him, along with the pencils. As an artist, that meant more to her than any gift he could have bought. They promised each other that one day, they'd finally share a real kiss. Their moment got cut short when Lester called Nico back to work. After her stream ended, May messaged Dozer to thank him and talked him into a video call. Dozer opened up about his life, how he'd been in a wheelchair since the war, how people treated him like he was invisible the moment he came home, and how he hadn't left his house in 6 years, even before the pandemic started. He showed her the drone he used to see the outside world, and confirmed that things out there were exactly as bad as the news made them sound. That same night, a masked enforcer everyone just called EMTT caught a man who'd escaped from a Q zone. The man swore up and down that he was clean. EMTT didn't care. He pulled a knife and killed him anyway. Back at Sarah's place, Nico set up a projector in his yard so they could watch a movie together on their virtual date. The mood broke fast when Lita started coughing. Sarah touched her grandmother's forehead and felt the fever immediately. Within 2 seconds, sanitation agents surrounded the building. They pounded on Sarah's door, ready to break it down, until EMTT stepped in and told them they had the wrong apartment. Sarah watched on her security camera as they dragged her actual neighbor out instead, and when that terrified woman came begging at Sarah's door, Sarah almost let her in. Nico talked her out of it, telling her to think about her own safety first. The agents hauled the neighbor away. Then EMTT rang Sarah's bell directly, telling her he knew she was inside. He asked if she'd left the apartment at all. She lied and said no, and he finally left. Once he was gone, Sarah suited up to bring Lita some medicine. Though Lita kept begging her to stay away, Nico made it back to sit outside her door, and the two of them talked through the night about their favorite memories, because Sarah knew that in the morning, Lita's fever meant they'd both be taken. Elsewhere, William tried to sneak out of the house in an oxygen mask, claiming he had a work meeting. Piper caught him and didn't buy it, reminding him that every time he left, he brought filth back to their daughter. William snapped back that his job was what kept them fed, and Piper reluctantly let him go, telling him to burn his clothes when he got home. She then checked on Emma, who worried her father was doing something dangerous, and asked if her mom wished she were a different kind of daughter. Piper told her she was perfect exactly as she was. William's meeting turned out to be with May. She put on a disguise just to be near him like always, but that night, he was tired of the masks and took them off before they slept together. When he finally came home, Piper silently watched him burn his clothes in the yard. The next morning, Sarah ran the test. She passed. Lita didn't. The app gave its verdict instantly. The agents were coming. Nico, still waiting outside, heard everything and begged Sarah to run with him right then. She refused to leave Lita behind and told him to save himself. Nico promised he'd fix this and took off, calling Lester and demanding 2 immunity passes on the spot. Lester couldn't help him, but let slip that William and Piper could, revealing that the packages Nico had been delivering to their mansion were actually illegal bracelets all along. Nico grabbed his savings and raced to the mansion. William pretended not to understand what he was talking about and hung up on him. Furious, William and Piper turned on each other, since only people they trusted were supposed to know about the business, and somehow word had gotten out. Piper tried to smooth things over with Nico, claiming William was just being careful, and asked how he'd found out about them. Nico lied and said he'd only guessed, since rich people usually had connections. Piper claimed she had no bracelets left, but gave him an address where he could find some. While Nico raced there on his bike, Sarah sat with Lita as she said her final words, full of love, and passed away. Nico reached an abandoned building and met EMTT, who claimed he could program bracelets and asked for the names of the people Nico wanted to save. Nico hesitated to give up so much information, so EMTT offered a handshake as a show of good faith. The moment Nico took it, EMTT stabbed him and demanded the names by force. Nico headbutted him free and checked the box connected to the computer, only to find it empty. Piper had sent him straight into a trap. EMTT called for backup, and Nico ran, bleeding up a stairwell as guards opened fire below. He ducked behind machinery, threw a can to throw off their aim, but they found him anyway. Just as they closed in, a huge stranger named Boomer appeared out of nowhere, knocked 2 guards out cold, grabbed their weapon and pulled Nico away. Boomer explained he was sick of EMTT's men dumping bodies in his building, and had decided to fight back on his own. More guards showed up, and the two of them held their ground together, Boomer smashing one down with a refrigerator door, while Nico cracked another over the head with a pipe. An alarm blared through the halls. Boomer stayed behind to keep fighting while Nico made a run for it. While Nico was escaping, William called Lester demanding to know where his courier was. Lester lied and said Nico had switched off his GPS, and William turned to Piper, certain now that Lester was the one who'd leaked their secret. Nico got home just long enough to patch his wound before Sarah called with the news that Lita was gone. Crushed with guilt over not getting the passes in time, he told her to stay hidden the moment the agents came. Meanwhile, May and Dozer had grown close enough to trust each other with anything. May admitted that William was a washed-up record executive who'd promised to make her a star, luring her to a motel right before the pandemic hit and trapping her there ever since. She broke down describing how alone she felt, how there was never going to be a record deal, how there was never going to be anything. Right then, William texted her wanting to see her that night. She ignored him, so he flooded her phone with messages until she finally answered, just to end things face to face. When he pushed back, May revealed she had recordings of him promising black market immunity passes and threatened to release them if he didn't back off. Piper happened to be standing outside his office and heard every word. William stormed off to grab his gun, only to find it missing. Piper was already holding it. She told him she'd known about the affair for a long time and didn't care about the cheating itself. She cared about the danger he kept bringing home to their daughter. She kicked him out at gunpoint, then called May to warn her that William was coming for her. May called Dozer in a panic, and he told her to come stay with him. At that exact moment, Nico slipped through the mansion's open front door just as William was driving off. Lester spotted Nico's location on the GPS and warned Piper immediately. At the same time, sanitation agents were surrounding Sarah's building. She tried calling Nico, but he had his phone silenced to avoid getting caught, so she snapped a photo of the truck outside instead. EMTT's team broke down her door. She hid, and when an agent found her, she knocked him out cold with a bat, stole his hazmat suit, and put it on to hide her face. Disguised as one of them, she helped carry Lita's body out in a bag and walked straight past everyone without a second look. Inside the mansion, Piper hid Emma in the bathroom before confronting Nico with a gun raised, furious that he put her daughter at risk just by being there. Nico swore he hadn't told anyone about her, that he was only there trying to save someone he loved too. Something in that got through to her, and she sat down to program a bracelet using Sarah's information, the process taking just a couple of minutes. Across town, May tried to drive away from the motel, but her car wouldn't start. William caught up to her and smashed her window, dragging her out by the throat. Just as she thought it was over, Dozer's drone appeared above them and put a bullet through William's head. May screamed and watched the drone disappear into the sky while Dozer texted her that he'd always protect her. With Lita's body loaded into the truck, Sarah waited for a moment nobody was watching and bolted. Back in the apartment, EMTT found his unconscious agent and ordered everyone to hunt for a fugitive. Sarah didn't get far. Sanitation agents surrounded her the second she reached the road. EMTT ripped off her mask and called her an idiot for running, pointing out that she'd been locked up with a sick woman this whole time and still showed no symptoms. That meant only one thing. She was immune. Sarah begged for her freedom, but EMTT ordered the arrest anyway. Nico burst into the apartment moments later and found only EMTT waiting. EMTT told him his own story, how he used to drive garbage trucks for the Department of Sanitation until his superiors died off one by one and he stepped into the power vacuum. He told Nico he didn't understand how lucky the immune really were. They were untouchable. They could do anything they wanted with zero consequences. Then he pulled his knife and lunged. Nico grabbed Sarah's pencil off the table and drove it straight into EMTT's neck. EMTT staggered around the room for a few long seconds before finally dropping dead. On his way out, Nico found Sarah's phone and saw the photo of the sanitation truck. He called Lester, admitting he owed him one for tipping him off earlier, and asked for the truck's ID number. Lester pulled it up and got Dozer on the line to track it down with the drone. Within minutes, Dozer had eyes on the truck. Arriving at the nearest Q-zone, Nico rode faster than he ever had in his life and made it just as Sarah was being dragged out. The guards raised their guns, ready to fire. Sarah broke free and ran to meet him halfway, and Nico snapped the bracelet onto her wrist before anyone could stop them. When the guards grabbed her again, Nico pointed at the bracelet. They scanned it. Clean. Immune. They had no legal reason left to hold her, and they let her go. Nico and Sarah finally stood face to face after years of nothing but screens between them, and they shared their first kiss. 3 months later, May was live streaming safely from her own home. Dozer tore the paper off his windows for good, feeling alive again, and showed May the ocean through his drone, inviting her to finally see the beach with him. On the news, William and EMTT's crimes were being exposed thanks to the recordings May had kept, and investigators had turned their attention to Piper's household next. Piper let her maid go and sent her home to her family. And somewhere across the state, Lester opened a package with a letter from Nico, confirming that he and Sarah had made it out safely. Inside the box was one more immunity bracelet, a thank you for the man who'd finally done the right thing. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more.